Hey guys, welcome to a new video from NZ Pocket Guide. Today we are going to give you 10 tips for a perfect working holiday experience in New Zealand. Without further ado, because it's raining, let's get started. Alright, so I want to get started straight up with helping you guys with work. In order to work in New Zealand, you need a couple of things before you even start looking for a job. You do need to open a New Zealand bank account and to get an IRD number. The IRD number is basically your tax number in New Zealand, what allows you to work and pay taxes in the country. Damn, it's raining quite a lot. In order to apply for an IRD number, you can head to nzpocketguide.com, and there you're gonna get all your tips on how to apply. It's gonna be super easy. In order to get a bank account number, you will also need to go on NZ Pocket Guide and follow our tips. Tip number 2, Laura.
Our second tip is that you should travel around for just maybe 1 or 2 months before actually settling somewhere for work. How a place looks on the internet is completely different to the actual, vibe of the town, or somewhere where you might arrive and be like, actually, I don't want to stay here for work. It's better to actually travel around the country first and see where you want to base yourself, where it feels really awesome, or you might meet a group of people that you want to stick with, for instance. So yeah, I always recommend definitely do some traveling before deciding where to work.
Yeah, and I'm gonna piggyback on that for tip number 3, but first up I'm gonna swap the camera so you guys can see the beautiful volcano over there. So for my tip number 3, I'm gonna say consider all your transportation methods. Make sure that you consider everything from car rental, as well as car purchasing, camper van rental, as well as camper van purchasing, and bus options. There is really a plethora of options when traveling in New Zealand, and a lot of people just go with the first thing that they think of, which is getting a camper van so they can save a lot of money on accommodation. It's not always the case. Sometimes getting a car is actually a better option for you. So just make sure that you consider all your options, you weigh the pros and the cons, and you see what's right for you, because genuinely getting a camper van, buying a used camper van basically, is not the best option for every single person. It is for some people, but not for everybody.
Before we move on to our next tip, Robin's just going to give a quick wipe to the lens.
All right.
All right, for our next tip, I would suggest that although the New Zealand, Immigration New Zealand suggests that people have a minimum of about $4,200, I think it is.
For 12 months, yeah?
For 12 months in New Zealand on a working holiday, we actually recommend having a little bit more than that in your bank account before coming over here, to give you enough of a cushion before finding work, giving you enough money for traveling, for having some experiences here, because you haven't come here just to work, you are here to experience New Zealand as well. So we usually recommend to have a little bit more, usually about 5,600, that sort of realm is a good amount to have before coming to New Zealand. And that's in New Zealand dollars, by the way.
Yes. All right, so the next thing that I have is, remember that there is the word holiday in working holiday. A lot of people just come to New Zealand and really just want to get started on working. And I do understand that the money pressure of, making sure that your funds are lasting the whole time and everything is going to be the first thing on your mind. But remember that you're also here to experience the country and make the most of the country. So a little bit like what Laura was saying, getting a little bit of travel in is quite important, but also make sure that you know what you're saving up for and that you're not just working for the whole time. So if you chose to find a job somewhere and you've been working for like about 9 months, make sure that you stop and you spend that money. You experience New Zealand. There is a lot of experience to have here. There is a lot of places to visit. So make sure that you actually make it a trip of a lifetime. Look at that. That's pretty cool. That's pretty nice. All right, next tip, Laura.
Our next tip is to stay in hostels.
Oh, nice.
So while you are traveling around New Zealand, and maybe even when you first arrive somewhere where you're thinking about working, it's a good idea to stay in hostels, first of all, because it's really cheap. It's the cheapest type of accommodation you can do, other than sort of freedom camping, but it is the cheapest sort of accommodation in New Zealand. And second of all, you want to do this because there's often boards where you can find either vehicles to buy, jobs, and ooh, there's a tomtit. Yeah, you can find vehicles, jobs. Yeah, so there's usually...
So distracting, the birds.
So there's usually sort of resources there to help you with your working holiday, and of course you're also in the perfect place to meet like-minded people that also might be staying in the area or even just doing some fun travel around where you can join in.
And you can stay in a working hostel that will even just place you in jobs, which is even easier.
Yes, that is a good extra tip.
All right, so the next tip that I have for you guys is to basically be conservative with your money. So you don't necessarily need to do a bungee jump or a skydive every single day. New Zealand has a lot of free activities to do which are absolutely spectacular. Right now we're doing a fantastic walk and it costs us nothing aside from the gas, which gas is expensive. Anyway, this is beside the point. There is a lot of free things to do in New Zealand, so stock up on the free things in order to make sure that your budget lasts long enough. If you are learning to live on a shoestring budget, you'll be able to make your budget last super long and you have to work less, and therefore you can experience New Zealand more.
All right, and my next tip is, it's a pretty obvious one, but I'll just say it anyway, is get a local phone number. So first of all, when you are contacting employers, for instance, they're not going to call back an international number. They want to call people that are actually in New Zealand, for instance, or text people in New Zealand. And the other reason for that also is you want to save money, and international roaming on your phone is not going to be cheap. So yeah, get a local phone number as soon as you can once you arrive in New Zealand. We have comparisons on nzpocketguide.com for the different types of phone networks and the prices and packages they offer.
All right, so now we're going to test Laura about the seasons. So my next tip is about coming in New Zealand during the right season. A lot of people are trying to come to New Zealand in the New Zealand summer, which runs from...
It runs from December to February.
And that's not necessarily the best season to come to New Zealand on a working holiday visa. That's when New Zealand is really, really busy. All the tourism prices are as high as it gets. And finding a job basically is a little bit harder because first you're not during the fruit picking seasons, but also most of the positions have been filled by people that are, either students in New Zealand, which are on their holiday break during summer, or businesses have already found their staff beforehand ahead of the busy summer season. So coming to New Zealand in the shoulder season, which is spring or autumn, is usually the smartest move, because like that you can fill those job gaps. And you can fill those job gaps literally just ahead of the season when businesses are actually hiring. All right, so that's a total of 10 tips to help you plan an epic gap year or working holiday in New Zealand. I hope that you guys did find that super useful. There is a link in the description below for more. You can also check out NZ Pocket Guide. It's kind of your Bible of taking a gap year in New Zealand. There is hundreds and hundreds of articles on there to help you plan the perfect trip in a country.
That's free.
And it's all 100% free for sure. If you find this video useful, again, you hit like, you hit subscribe, and if you want to monetarily support us, you can head to Patreon, get yourself some awesome perk, and give us a little bit of money every month. All right, in the meantime, we'll see you on the next video. Bye bye.
See ya.